So it's that time of the year, that weekend. It's throwback weekend at Darlington for the Goodyear 400. Of course, Darlington, we paid tribute to the past and present of the sport, paid tribute to legends, not only with traditions and victory lane and everything, but also we have paint schemes that will be paid tribute to the past and present of the sport and pay homage to everybody that's paved the way for the sport. So let's see how, and of course we got some brand new paint schemes for Darlington to take a look at. So let's see how this year's batch of throwback paint schemes look this year. So the first throwback paint scheme we're going to go over here, we have Ross Chastain's throwback paint scheme. As Ross Chastain has thrown it back to the classic Busch Light logo from the 2000s. Yeah, that old great Busch logo. Honestly, that's a really good logo, really good paint scheme here. I mean, the only knock I have on this paint scheme is that this concept has been done in the past before with the original Busch logo with Harvick, because I believe Harvick's done a throwback to that original Busch can from the 2000s. So yeah, it does lose some luster there and originality because it's been done before. Still a great paint scheme though, but you know, it just loses some originality because of the Busch logo's been done. That logo's been done before. Still a great paint scheme though from Chastain, like it though. So the next throwback scheme we got here, we have Austin Dillon's throwback scheme. As Austin Dillon has thrown it back to the good old black and gold Bass Pro Shops paint scheme that Dale Earnhardt ran in the 1998 season. So yeah, really nice paint scheme here. Of course, you know, it can't be a number 3 car throwback without a Dale Sr. paint scheme tribute of any kind. If anyone's wondering, they're probably still never going to do a black number 3 Intimidator scheme, because of Dale's mother's last wishes, which was she never wanted to see another black 3 car ever again. It's a nice paint scheme now. I mean, the only negative I have about this paint scheme is that the number is white instead of black, because on that 98 scheme, the number was black. But, you know, but at the same time, though, I kind of feel like that white 3 makes this scheme better than that. If anyone's wondering, no, Teresa Earnhardt cannot do anything about this paint scheme because it's not a DEI paint scheme. It's an RCR paint scheme. So Childress has final say over it. You know, still a solid paint scheme though, and honestly, the white-black number thing, that's more of a minor nitpick if anything. Still a good paint scheme though, nonetheless. So the next paint scheme we're going to go over here, we got Josh Berry's throwback paint scheme. As Josh Berry's throwing it back to a late model scheme ran by Rodney Childers in 1998. So yeah, really good paint scheme here and a paid tribute to Rodney Childers, back to Childers' early days when he was racing late models. So nice paint scheme here, paid tribute to Rodney Childers, is easily one of the greatest crew chiefs that SHR has ever had. So yeah, Josh Berry paying homage to his pit boss, because even though Berry's rookie season has been pretty disappointing this year, this paint scheme isn't disappointing in the slightest. Like this scheme a lot. Good job by Berry at SHR. So the next paint scheme we're going to go over here, we got Kyle Larson's throwback scheme. As for this one, this has been a throwback scheme we've been waiting a long time for. As this one is paying tribute to the old Kellogg's paint scheme ran by Terry Labonte in the 1996 season when Labonte won the championship. Even though Jeff Gordon was the better driver in 96, Labonte still got the title though. Still, at least the title remained with HMS regardless. Still, about fucking time they finally did a throwback to Terry Labonte. Even though I think some fans wanted it to be the old 2000s, early to mid-2000s Kellogg's paint scheme that Labonte ran. You know, but hey, beggars can't be choosers at the end of the day. This was still a cool Terry Labonte throwback scheme regardless. You know, they did a great job with the scheme, especially with the adjustments with the number placement. They even have both number fonts for it, where you have that number font on that side, and then the other side is the traditional 5 font. So they even nailed the 2 and 5 fonts here. Easily, I'd say this is easily the best throwback scheme this year, without a doubt. We've been waiting a long time for this scheme, and it delivered. Honestly, I think this scheme was worth waiting this long for it. Great job by HMS with this one. So our next throwback paint scheme we got here, we have Brad Keselowski's throwback paint scheme. As this paint scheme throws it back to an old Castro Tom Toyota Supra GT paint scheme ran in the 1995 All Japan Grand Touring Car Championship Series. So Keselowski throwing it back to one of Castrol's great paint schemes from the early days in the 90s from another series on the other side of the world. So yeah, great throwback there to Castrol's early roots in racing. So yeah, pretty cool there. I'll be honest though, it'd be a lot cooler if it was a DJ Kennington throwback paint scheme, but you know, we're not ready there just yet for a DJ Kennington throwback in the Cup Series. What old NASCAR Canada Series shout out there. Even though there are probably going to be a bunch of boomers that will automatically hate this scheme because it's throwing it back to a Toyota scheme in Japan. Because, oh, Toyota to Japan are the devil because it's not American. Even though there are a lot more Toyota manufacturing plants in America than there are for Ford. But don't tell them that because common sense is non-existent. But that's a topic for another day. Still a great paint scheme, though, nonetheless. So for the next throwback scheme, we got Corey LaJoie's throwback scheme, as Corey LaJoie is throwing it back to his early days in NASCAR, with this paint scheme being a throwback to his 2012 paint scheme that Corey LaJoie ran in the ARCA East Series, back when it was known as the K&N East Series. So yeah, really great paint scheme here is Corey LaJoie throwing it back to his old days, to his early days in racing, back to his early roots, when he first started in the NASCAR circuit. Back in 2012 with this paint scheme. Really good paint scheme here. Too bad they couldn't put an additional 0 in front of that 7. Like some of other LaJoie's paint schemes where he's included additional numbers in it to really add that throwback feel. But, that's just a minor nitpick, if anything. Still a great scheme, though, nonetheless. So, for our next throwback paint scheme, we have Chase Elliott's throwback paint scheme. As for Chase Elliott, he's throwing it back to the old National Guard paint scheme that Dale Jr. ran back in 2014. Jesus Christ, I know it's been 10 years since that scheme ran, but good God. I can't believe now after 10 years that now qualifies as a throwback paint scheme. Jesus Christ. Honestly, I think this would have been a lot cooler if it was the old 2008 paint scheme, something from a little longer than that. But, still a great paint scheme, though. They did a great job here. Chase Elliott's going to be wearing the old skeleton glove hands that Dale Jr. always wore in the car, so that's going to be cool to see there with the in-car camera if Chase Elliott ever gets that much camera time. So yeah, really good paint scheme here, really great job with them here, and I know a lot of fans are going to like it too, because Dale Jr. was the OG Redneck Jesus, and Chase Elliott is now Redneck Jesus Jr., so it makes perfect sense for one Redneck Jesus to pay tribute to another Redneck Jesus. Still a great paint scheme, though. Chase Elliott, who's the current most popular driver in the sport, paying tribute to the old former popular driver of the sport, and Dale Jr. And also, in terms of Dale Jr., if anyone hasn't heard, Dale Jr. is going to be back in the broadcast booth next year. Not with NBC. He'll be going to Amazon Prime and TNT. And honestly, with Dale Jr. going to Amazon Prime, maybe that will shut everybody up about NASCAR going to streaming networks now. Even though streaming is going to become the future here, plus it's a lot cheaper than cable, but then again, common sense non-existent. But yeah, still a great paint scheme, though, nonetheless. So for our next throwback paint scheme, we got Chase Briscoe's throwback paint scheme. As for Chase Briscoe, he's throwing it back to his father, Kevin, and his grandfather, Richard, with an old sprint car scheme that they both ran back in the early days of their racing career. So he's throwing it back, keeping it in the family with the family roots, paying tribute to the Briscoe family name. So yeah, really great paint scheme here, throwing it back to the early days. You really like these kind of paint schemes, especially with the backstory here. A lot of connections with it here, pretty great paint scheme here. Really like it for sure. So next throwback paint scheme we got Kaz Grala's throwback scheme. As for Kaz Grala, he's throwing it back to the old paint scheme that Parnelli Jones ran in the 1969 season. Nice. So yeah, overall, really great paint scheme. Did a really great job, especially with the number placement too, with the adjustments there. Really great paint scheme here. Really like it, paying a tribute back to some of the old pioneers of the sport that paved the way for the drive stars of today. So yeah, really great job here, Parnelli Jones doesn't get as much recognition as he should. Really great paint scheme here. Rick Ware Racing actually did a good job with this throwback paint scheme. And at least it's not that fucker Cody Ware driving it, so at least that's good there too. I kind of wish they actually did some throwback scheme for Justin Haley, but hey, maybe next year. So for our next throwback paint scheme, we got Martin Truex Jr.'s throwback paint scheme. As for Truex, he's throwing it back to the auto owner's paint scheme that he won the Southern 500 with in 2016. Man, good God, it's been 8 years and somehow that scheme now qualifies as a throwback scheme. Jesus Christ. I mean, yeah, it's been 8 years, but fuck. You know, still a great paint scheme, though, theme, nonetheless. Even though, to be honest, this scheme kind of looks a lot like Martin Truex Jr.'s normal auto owner's insurance paint scheme anyway. Just with a few minor differences. You know, still a great paint scheme, though. You know, if anyone's wondering, I think no, Truex can't do a throwback to like his 2007 paint scheme with DEI because Teresa Earnhardt still owns the copyrights to it. But the good news is, don't worry. Teresa may not have those copyrights much longer because I believe her stranglehold on the copyrights expire after this year. Here's hoping Dale Jr. or Richard Childress can pick it up and it opens the playbook for more throwback schemes in the future. You know, still a great paint scheme, though, nonetheless. But don't worry. Maybe someday Martin Truex Jr. will do a throwback to his old mid to late 2000s DEI Bass Pro Shots paint scheme. Someday. If Truex doesn't retire after this year, that is. Alright, so the next throwback scheme we got here, we have Christopher Bell's throwback paint scheme. As this paint scheme, he's paying tribute to DeWalt's 100-year anniversary as a company. And oof, that's embarrassing for JGR. They uploaded the wrong photos. They uploaded photos of Christopher Bell's normal DeWalt paint scheme. Oof, that's gotta be embarrassing for JGR, especially with how great they've been this year. Oof. Big kink in the armor. Wait. This is Bell's throwback paint scheme? What the hell is this? This scheme is literally Christopher Bell's normal DeWalt paint scheme, just with a DeWalt 100 Years logo slapped on the fucking hood. I mean, it's not a bad paint scheme, but that shouldn't be a throwback. At least actually throw it back to maybe one of the original DeWalt logos, for fuck's sakes, instead of just dropping a DeWalt 100-year logo on it. Like, this is easily the worst throwback scheme we have this year. I'm taking massive points off this paint scheme just for JGR and DeWalt's pure, utter fucking laziness. So much potential, and yet they flushed it down the toilet just to be a bunch of cheap asses. They had a good idea going, and then once they just showed it was just Christopher Bell's normal paint scheme with the DeWalt 100-year logo slapped on the hood, they just lost me there. They had a good concept, only to piss it away. Very disappointing. So for our next throwback paint scheme, we got Harrison Burns' throwback paint scheme. As for Harrison Burns, he's throwing it back to Glenn Wood's old paint scheme from 1953. Well, it loses some points because it's another Wood Brothers throwback paint scheme because it's honestly tradition. Even though the traditional red and white Motorcraft 21 car is literally a throwback to the Wood Brothers that it runs every week it runs. And also for this throwback scheme, holy shit, somebody alert the press. We have a Wood Brothers throwback scheme that isn't the red or white car. It's the black car. Holy shit. Somebody quick alert the press. You know, it's still a great throwback paint scheme paying tribute to the Wood Brothers that have been in the fucking sport since the sport's inception. So yeah, really good paint scheme, and I get it. Whatever points it lost for being a Wood Brothers throwback, it gets those points right back because it's something different other than the red and white paint scheme. So yeah, whatever points it lost originally, I'm going to give it right back. So it balances out. Still a good paint scheme, though, paying tribute to the Wood Brothers. Even have Glenn Wood's name on the door right there. So yeah, that's a good tribute right there. Alright, so for our next paint scheme, we got William Byron's throwback paint scheme. As for William Byron, he's throwing it back to another Jeff Gordon paint scheme. This time it's Jeff Gordon's old Flames paint scheme from 2009 to 2011. That old scheme. Which, that was a pretty cool paint scheme. Honestly, it's, pretty much the same thing I said about when William Byron threw it back to the original DuPont Flames paint scheme 2 years ago. About time they threw it back to this paint scheme. Pretty cool paint scheme. Even got the number placement right with it, I'll be honest, I always like the Jeff Gordon Flames paint schemes a lot more than the fucking Rainbow Warrior schemes. Because the fucking Flames schemes were freaking badass. And this scheme is no exception. You know, really like this paint scheme. Really great job. I always like that Jeff Gordon old DuPont throw paint flame scheme. Like it a lot more than the fucking rainbow crap they drove in the 90s. You know, really cool scheme here. Pretty badass. You know, if Larson didn't do the Terry Labonte throwback this year, I would have rated this as the best throwback paint scheme. Like, I think any other year this would have been the best throwback paint scheme. But sadly, I think the Terry Labonte throwback that Kyle Larson is doing is just better than this paint scheme. You know, great paint scheme, just in the end, there's just always one scheme that's better. So the next throwback paint scheme we're going to go over here, we have Daniel Hemrick's throwback paint scheme, as Daniel Hemrick is paid tribute to Black Tire Service's 95-year anniversary. And for anybody that doesn't know what Black Tire Service is, well, Black Tire Service, it's one of Goodyear's leading tire partners in the Darlington area. So it's a great at least sponsor paint scheme tribute. Paid tribute to a sponsor that has connections in the Darlington area and a great connections with Goodyear, as Goodyear is the title sponsor for the race with it being the Goodyear 400. So yeah, at least paying tribute to Goodyear in a way as well. Even though Goodyear hasn't been on the best of fans' terms with some of the tire issues, though. But Goodyear, though, has been a long supporter in NASCAR since the beginning, so paying tribute to Goodyear as well and their roots and their contributions to the sport. You know, it's an alright paint scheme. It's a pretty solid one. So for our next throwback paint scheme, we got Todd Gilliland's throwback scheme. As for Todd Gilliland, he's throwing it back to his early days at racing, to a paint scheme that he got his first career Cars Tour late modeling the series win back in 2015. So Todd Gilliland paid tribute to his early roots in racing from the Cars Tour, which has started to pick up steam as the last couple years, being a pretty good development series for a lot of young drivers in the sport. And Todd Gilliland, really good paint scheme, paid tribute to his early days in racing. Really like these kind of schemes that pay tribute to a driver's early days in racing, or pay tribute to a driver in their early roots. So yeah, really like this paint scheme. Really great job here done. So the next throwback paint scheme we got here, we have Ryan Preece's throwback paint scheme. As for Ryan Preece, Preece is throwing it back to his early days in racing as well, as Preece's throwback scheme is a tribute to his 2013 Merlin Modifieds paint scheme that Preece ran in 2013, the year that Preece went on to win the 2013 Merlin Modifieds Championship in. So Preece paying tribute to his early days in racing and his first real success in NASCAR of any kind with that championship win. So yeah, really like this paint scheme, you know. And of course, you know, Preece was an absolute fucking beast in Modifieds too, so that's good there too. So yeah, really like this paint scheme. Preece paying tribute to his early success in the sport. And depending on what happens with his contract situation at SHR, you know, hey, I would welcome Preece back in the Modifieds with open arms, and Preece could probably dominate still in Modifieds. Great paint scheme by Ryan Preece here. Really like it, you know. Great job by SHR to execute on this one. You know, SHR did a really good job executing these throwbacks to the early days for drivers, too. So the next throwback paint scheme we got here, we have Tyler Reddick's throwback paint scheme. It's Tyler Reddick. He's throwing it back to Tim Richmond's 1982 paint scheme. So yeah, really great paint scheme. Really great job here getting everything done with this paint scheme. And of course, paying a tribute to the late Tim Richmond, the original NASCAR sex god. You know, gone way too soon, obviously. You know, so great tribute to pay tribute to a legend in the sport from the 80s. You know, really great job by Reddick in 2311 here. Great job by everyone there. So for the next throwback paint scheme, we got Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s throwback paint scheme. As for Stenhouse, he's throwing it back to the old Oscar Mayer craft paint scheme that Mark Martin ran in the 2004 Bud Shootout. So yeah, you know, paying a tribute to Kraft, which is one of the partners with Kroger as well. So yeah, really great paint scheme. They did a really good job executing this paint scheme, because Stenhouse has had some pretty bad throwback paint schemes. Just look at 2021 as an example. But this scheme kind of gets redemption for that kind of crap. But yeah, you know, really great paint scheme by Stenhouse and JTG. They really did a good job paying tribute to Mark Martin with this paint scheme. Really great job here. So for our next throwback paint scheme, we got Alex Bowman's throwback paint scheme. As for Alex Bowman, Bowman is throwing it back to Jimmy Johnson's old Lowe's paint scheme from the early and mid 2000s that Jimmy ran from 2002 to 2005. So yeah, really great paint scheme. Did a really good job, especially adjusting with the number placement. However, this scheme actually does lose points still because this throwback paint scheme has been done before since Jimmy Johnson ran this paint scheme at Homestead in 2018 for Lowe's final race in NASCAR. Still a great job and a great paint scheme. And plus, it makes sense to do a Jimmy Johnson throwback paint scheme, since Jimmy Johnson was inducted in the Hall of Fame this year. I'll be honest, though, I think it should have been a different Jimmy Johnson paint scheme that hasn't been done before since this has been done. I mean, you could have done one of Jimmy Johnson. You could have done like Jimmy Johnson's Lowe's paint scheme from 2010 to 2011 as an example, since that hasn't been done yet. Or even one of Jimmy Johnson's Lowe's paint scheme from 2012 to 2014, the blue one with the white stripes. You could have done that. Or since now mid-2000 throwback schemes now count as throwbacks, you could have done Jimmy's. Actually, no, you could have done Jimmy's throwback from 2015 to 2016. There could have been some other potentials here for a Jimmy Johnson throwback, but still a good scheme nonetheless. I just wish it was a different Jimmy Johnson paint scheme instead of just this one, since this one has already been done before. Still a good scheme nonetheless. So for the next throwback paint scheme we got here, we have Zane Smith's throwback paint scheme. As for Zane, he's throwing it back to Dave Marcus's old legendary 71 paint scheme from Dave Marcus's old days. Even nailed the number font, the white letters on the red car, everything. Just a really great job executing this paint scheme and paying tribute to Dave Marcus, a pioneer of the sport. Really great job by Zane Smith and everyone at Spire for nailing this paint scheme. They really did a good job with this one. Really like this one. So our next throwback paint scheme, we have Carson Hocevar's throwback paint scheme. As for Carson Hocevar, he's throwing it back to an old vintage police car scheme that a lot of cop cars ran back in the day. So yeah, pretty good paint scheme though. Kind of wish they had found a place to put a blue and red light on it, or at least painted a blue and red light on it to make it look like a real police car, And also in a way pays tribute to the sport's early roots and beginnings too, since the whole sport of NASCAR, the whole concept of it, was based off moonshiners souping up their cars to outrun the cops during Prohibition. So yeah, a good way to pay tribute to the roots of the sport and pay tribute to that too. So yeah, really good paint scheme here, even though it's not really 100% a driver throwback or a sponsor throwback. It's very interesting and different with the police throwback paint scheme. Pretty good paint scheme there. At least this paint scheme doesn't have that fucking stupid ass back the blue bull crap on it. And the final throwback scheme we're going to go over in this video, we have Daniel Suarez's throwback paint scheme. As for Daniel Suarez, he's doing an IndyCar throwback paint scheme here. So for all the IndyCar fans in here, this is going to be an interesting one for you. As this one is paying tribute to former Mexican IndyCar driver Adrian Fernandez's old paint scheme ran in 2004, back during the CART IRL split. Whatever side of the fence you were on there. So yeah, really good job paying tribute to that scheme. Got it done perfectly. Even with the number font as well too. Really great job here. And for anyone's wondering, no, it is too soon to do a Paddle Award paint scheme. Too soon for that. Same deal with Sergio Perez. Too soon for that one as well. Maybe some point down the line. Too soon now. Really great paint scheme and paying tribute to an old Mexican racing legend too, with Suarez's roots in Mexico as well. So yeah, really great paint scheme, and Suarez paying tribute to another Amigo racing racer as well. But yeah, anyway, that'll wrap it up here for all the throwback paint schemes for Darlington at 2022 this year. So yeah, sadly though, there were some pretty good paint schemes still. Sadly though, not as much support for it as we've seen in years past. As this year, out of the 36, 37 cars in the field, whatever the entry list is, only 22 of them were throwback paint schemes this year, which is pretty disappointing because we've had years in the past where nearly every car in the field did a throwback paint scheme. Hell, no one at Penske even is doing a throwback paint scheme this year, so that's pretty disappointing. Not even Hamlin doing a throwback this year, and Ty Gibbs as well. There are quite a few drivers and teams this year that aren't throwing throwbacks this year. Of course, though, however, there are some teams, though, that will do throwback paint schemes in the fall at Darlington for the Southern 500, since that's been considered more of a throwback weekend than this one on Mother's Day weekend. You know, just kind of sad that there isn't much support for throwback weekend as we've had in years past. You know, still some pretty good paint schemes, though. Easily, I would say the best paint scheme this year was Kyle Larson's Terry Labonte Kellogg's throwback scheme. I think that's easily the best throwback scheme here. And the worst throwback scheme, I'd say it has to be Christopher Bell's DeWalt 100 Years paint scheme. Because that's just literally Christopher Bell's normal DeWalt paint scheme, just with a DeWalt 100 Years logo on it. You know, there could have been some potential with that scheme, but JGR flushed it down the toilet. But yeah, you know, but I think in terms of throwback paint schemes, HMS once again stands supremo for everyone else. Like, really, almost all four of HMS's paint schemes, HMS fucking nailed the shit out of it and hit it out of the park. Easily, I would say HMS wins overall for all the throwback schemes. But anyway, that wraps it up here. And yeah, now to the race itself. And all I say to everyone is, I hope you enjoyed how all those cars look, because you see how all those cars look? That's as good as they're going to look come Sunday. Anyway, though, see you all later. I'm out.